do that, start from there.
Yeah, just start going
Just
to the
start
top.
the drainage improvement plan. I
Yeah.
don't know how you feel about that.
What's the lifetime?
Concrete.
But
Okay.
we're replacing it now, and it was concrete, right?
Yeah,
So how long has it been since we last built it or replaced it?
Well, it's
That's
a
different
30-year
question.
life. Well, this is what they're telling you, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's concrete, so.
yeah.
It's like replacing a concrete road, so. As long as you maintain it.
Concrete road has 10 year life.
Curb maybe not.
Fire truck is not, right?
No, when about 15, when about 15 years, yeah.
Sidewalk replacement is,
It's concrete as well.
yeah. Solar lights,
Solar lights, yes, they would not be 30 years.
I guess they're probably more around.
10, 15 is what
Yeah, I guess 10 or 15.
15 would be my guess.
library roof,
That one actually comes with a guarantee. I think the way we're doing it is they promised us at least 20 years on that.
Yeah, that one should.
That one wouldn't surprise me.
We
if
know
it's
that one
upwards
for
of
sure,
30.
yeah.
Ace, want me to just keep going one by
Yeah,
one?
yeah,
Okay.
just flat through.
Yeah, AC replacement program, I mean, at least 5 to 10 years on that, depending on the AC unit we're replacing. Some of these police items, ballistic shields, I mean, you're probably at least getting 5 years out of those. Parks engineering, I mean, that's more.
That's
of a-
just
Yeah,
engineering.
that's just an engineering plan. Those animal control kennels, those ones you're probably at least getting at least 5 or 10 years, right?
No, longer than that.
Oh, longer.
Yeah,
Okay.
you get 2025 over those.
2025 on that. That police and courts air conditioning replacement, that is a enormous unit. We're at least getting 10 to 15 out of that. All these kind of, I'd call these next 5 or 6 items, those smaller police items, you're at least getting 5 years
5
out
years.
of those as well. Those 2 library items as well, 5 to 10 years. That fleet, those 2 fleet items, you're at least getting 10 years out of those. The next section, which is kind of all those IT items, those ones won't really have a standard
Life. yeah.
life, you know, it's more kind of like software
How
and
about
lease
the
payments.
How about the GIS one specifically, since it's so large?
Yeah, that one we would at least be on for.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're,
10
once we
years.
get
Yeah,
hooked
once
into
we're on
that,
there,
then we're
hooked
on
in.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it ties into all of our financial, all of our court, everything. So once we're into that one, we're
so
on.
that's not a frequent switch kind of.
No,
No, that's a dedicated switch. So when we're on with that, we're talking at least 10 years.
Okay.
Then as you go down here, the skid steer loader. Really any of those pieces of equipment as far as like your dump truck, your,
7 to 10 years.
yeah, 7 to 10 years usually for
well, if
larger.
they're 10 years for 30-year financing, then do they qualify?
Well, that's a council, that's a
That's the-
council
yeah, that's all
question.
Yeah, but.
If you guys want to, I mean, it's been done before,
Okay,
but that's a council decision, so.
okay,
But all of these items that Stephen and Paul had included in there do qualify, so it's not a.
It's not a
question.
legal
Yeah,
issue.
It's not a
Yeah.
legal issue of does it qualify or not, it's more kind of as a council.
Do you want
as
to
you're making-
finance something
Yeah, do you
for
want it
30
7 or
years?
30
Or
years?
you, and like Stephen and I just talked about, you can always change that CO. It doesn't have to be a 30-year CO. We could structure
right.
it to have a 20-year CO. So we
Okay,
could do
right.
that as well. You know,
And
20,
and
yeah,
Certainly, we probably won't end up at $5 million.
right. I mean, your debt service payments obviously change because you're paying
No,
over
I
a shorter
understand
amount of
that.
time, but
Okay.
that's doable as well.
So is this gate replacement one of those items, 10 years?
Which one?
longer? Police entry,
Yeah, that's a long-term item.
okay, Wright Park greens last a long time.
Till they're ready to change them again, I guess, or the greens they've had,
Probably
been
30
there
years
for a
from
long
now.
time, yeah.
That animal control outside area addition, that would.
That'd at
that
least
would
be
at
20
least,
years.
Yeah, 15 to 20. We can skip that sports park one, but that one, that's not
No.
included here.
Oh, you're going
Yeah,
down that list, gotcha.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so people can follow along. Yeah, it might not be in the same order we're looking at it, but it could be.
So the gym floor is something that you could include?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
that's,
gym floor as
that
well.
gym floor that's in there's been there for a long time. It's been there since it was built, so that's a long-term item.
Yeah, the amphitheater, that's also a long-term item. That dump truck, you're talking at least 7 to 10 years.
7 to 10 years.
The parking lot, again, that's
That's a long term.
That's a long term. That Bearcat, you're at least getting probably 15 to 20 years off that.
The tactical unit,
Yes.
you included that?
Yeah, because it doesn't get used. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a high mileage vehicle.
No. Any of that Reese Davis storage and restrooms, the police and courts floor and replacement.
That's all building stuff.
That's
yeah.
building. Grand Park dredging, that one really wouldn't have, I mean, unless there's
That's not a
certain-
life. That's just something they're going to do one time, and we wouldn't do that again for a long amount of time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have a life, I guess.
Library storage shed, you're at least getting 10 years out of that. Flooring replacement, yeah, that floor would be good for quite a while as well, 5 to 10 years. Same thing with the library meeting room floor replacement. And then when you look at all these fire station, storage building, storage room, workout room build out, that again is infrastructure that you're at least getting 10 years out of. Golf course clubhouse roof replacement. We didn't get that one as scoped out as we did the library roof, but you're talking at least 15 to 20 years on that. The fire department portable fill station vehicle. That's another one of those heavy duty pieces of equipment. 10 to 15. 10. Okay. 10 on that. We can skip over that software because it's a software, and then you have two pieces of public works piece of equipment that again are at least 7 to 10 years of life out of those. And I think we have it covered. Then anything else below that is just kind of positions on the sheet that are
We don't
included.
finance those, I don't think.
Yeah.
No, I prefer not to.
Can you do a quick sum on what you identified there?
Yeah, it would
See how
be.
much it would be?
Well, Mayor, as we were going, I just kind of back of the envelope for stuff that's already in the budget. It would, for anything that's 10 years or more, would total out about $1.5 million or so.
That's in the budget,
Stuff that's already in the budget,
in the yellow.
that
Yeah.
would be 10 years or longer of life. Would be
Okay, and then
about
we're
one
adding
and a
some
half.
other stuff.
If we want to add other stuff, that's
Yeah, I mean, it's roughly what we have in the budget right now in capital items is 1.3 million, and then this is gonna be roughly another 3.5, because total, if you were to roll all of these pieces of equipment off your M&O and stick it in a CO or a tax note, the rough number we were looking at was, what was it, it's gonna be if you go.
Oh, you're talking
Yeah,
4.7?
4.7 million is the total of all those. But what we don't have in the budget, we estimate to be about 2.5, and what is in the budget right now is 1.3.
So you get to about 4 million, is that right?
4.7.
4.7.
So just under 5 million if you were to roll all of this off, off our M&O as it currently exists and what wasn't included in the budget. So then what we're looking at up right here is kind of the proposed version of the budget. And you can see what it does is to, as far as your tax rate information on the left, as far as how much we're over or under our target balance, our target fund balance. And then we have another version of this spreadsheet that I can bring up whenever we want to discuss it, of if we do want to approach this as far as what that debt service payment would cost. If you roll.
How does the council feel about this? I mean, from my perspective, many of these items that aren't included in the budget are gonna cost more year over year over year. And so why not, if we can, why not pick them up, why not get them now? I guess inflation may make this a better deal to some extent. Do you agree with that or not? You don't
Yeah, I
have
do,
to.
yeah.
You don't have to.
No, I agree. Yes, I agree.
I think that the proposed budget had a lot of long-term things in it,
right.
so this addresses that concern.
I tend to think that we should focus on stuff that we already had slated for this budget. I'm not sure I want to pull in a bunch of stuff that we had planned to not do.
I'd like to pull in some stuff that we could do
Yeah.
myself.
What did
It's
you
not
just
that-
calculate?
Stuff that, basically
In the
this
green,
list,
it's,
in the green, that's 10 years plus.
Okay.
And that was about 1.5 million total.
And mind you, the stuff that wasn't put in the proposed budget wasn't planned. It's still planned.
Right.
We just plan to do it a year later.
Yeah.
So when you say it wasn't planned, it was planned. This is just what we could fit in the parameters that we put
Right.
it in initially. So, and those parameters could change.
Some of the items like the heavy equipment, trucks,
skid steer loaders, are those better to purchase outright, or is it good to rent those long-term?
You can't get those
You
kind of
can't
pieces
lease those.
of equipment.
Yeah, the big heavy equipment, they don't lease to you. So, we've tried.
Is that the kind of stuff where they construct it on demand? Like you order it, they build it?
Not necessarily. Just those bigger pieces of like that heavier equipment. You can get tractors. We've tried. We could lease like the backhoes and things like that. But like the dump trucks, they wouldn't lease those. Like anything bigger than like a 450 or whatever, we usually have to buy those outright. They don't lease those. We've tried to lease as much as we possibly could, but
And some of that heavy equipment, are we replacing aged equipment with that? Or
yes.
is that adding to
No,
what we have?
no. Anytime we're asking you guys for equipment, we're replacing old equipment.
Unless it's a Bearcat.
Unless it's a Bearcat. That is a new piece of equipment, yes.
Is the cost of issuance of this, the same, no matter what amount for the certificates? Is that gonna be roughly the same?
Roughly, yes.
So if what do you do, $1 million or $5 million, it's still gonna be $90,000 there, right?
Probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, their costs are the same.
Right, exactly. The cost of issuance is not going to change based
Yeah.
on the amount.
Yeah.
Really, the only
So
thing
from
that'll
that
change, yeah.
perspective, I'd like to build that up a little bit myself and reduce the cost of that issuance.
Yeah.
Reduce the percentage.
The
of that
ratio,
issuance.
yeah.
Right, I'd like to add a few things to this, so, myself.
What do you think is the most important in the white list there?
Oh,
A couple things. I don't mean the one thing.
well,
What do you have in mind?
well, one of the things that I'd like to add to the green list is I'd like to go ahead and buy all the animal control kennels we need this year, which adds another $25,000 to that. And that
That's
item
something you don't
up there,
have
I
in
think
there?
we'd like to do that. We've been talking to people about that. It's relatively inexpensive.
Right.
It's on the right
compared to
side.
all this.
And how
No,
they
no, no,
want
no, no.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know, I mean,
You could pull in something like the library storage shed, but that doesn't change the ratio much.
you could, one of the things that I think we're gonna need eventually, if we want to try to change the perception of the shelter, is a walking area or an area that's $289,000 on that. I mean, that is something, I don't know, I mean, you can go through this list,
What's the lifespan for the police entry and exit gate replacement?
long.
Probably 20 years. Unless the technology changes.
And how urgent is that need? I mean, we clearly didn't include it in this budget.
I mean, it needs to be replaced, but it still
It
works.
still works.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like it's not working.
In terms of the shelter, how much do you guess the shelter is used by animals brought in from the county as opposed to the city? Because we currently take care of
50%.
county.
50%.
Then if we're having our citizens invest that much with tax dollars into the shelter, can we get any more assistance from the county?
We talked about that yesterday. We met with Lori Rocky and one of the other vets, and Brandon and Summer and I, and we definitely would like to approach them about more. I think it's 100,000 right now,
Correct.
and I tell you, we're getting a lot. We're making progress finally, and I'm telling you, 6 months ago, or almost a year ago, hadn't it been, Mayor?
Yeah.
When we started the discussions with them, it was pretty tough. We've really got onto a level now where we think we're making really good progress, and they see that we're trying to do. There's some really passionate people about these pets. More than potholes, trust me.
Yeah.
And I've actually asterisked both of those, animal control kennels and animal control outside area addition. I think we need to, if we can, somehow do that.
So you're asking them if the county can partner?
We're
We're already
They're
partners.
already doing it.
We're
What
already
was
in
Tim's
this
question?
increase,
Yeah, if we could get a pay
Increase that
increase.
100,000
Yeah.
to more.
yeah.
And we're willing to talk to Judge Stovall about that, but I think we need to make Brandon's job easier.
Yeah.
And my other targets, but I really want to target fire department and police department. With the growth we have coming to Greenville, those are, to me, they're tremendously important. There's a lot of things on here nice to have that we might be able to look at maybe next year. I'm just saying that the growth is coming.
I mean, the biggest target really is personnel. And that's
Absolutely, that's
already,
true.
we've already got that.
Mhm.
I was thinking maybe the sports park amphitheater could be something that would be a good candidate.
Oh, I would love that. I would love it.
Because it's gonna be mostly concrete too, right?
Yeah, in steel. Yeah.
Concrete steel, but
Yeah.
a long-lasting
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
asset.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we can use.
Yes, that's
And you
correct.
said with the fire department for their storage building, storage room, and build out room, that's a 10 years for all of those?
All
Yeah,
those are,
yeah, because those are all
Are part of the building.
infrastructure or building
Yeah.
improvements.
they're all relatively inexpensive compared to all the other things.
Right.
I think we ought to get that as much as we can. I'd like to see, personally, I'd like to see the animal control outside area, and I'd like to see the sports amphitheater, and then package up as many of those smaller items as we can that impact the police and fire departments. Try to get them as much as we can. That's my preference.
Might as well.
I see a lot of storage for different departments. Is there one way to make one larger storage space? I know it's convenient to have storage right where they want it, but
Yeah, it's all in different buildings, so, and it's all over town, so.
They're spread out.
You're gonna, yeah, I mean, you're gonna spend as much time, running back and forth.
trying to get your
That's the
money.
problem now. I mean, a lot of the Reese Davis stuff is stored here in this building, and they're running back and forth, so. We do that currently.
What is the need, what is the Reese Davis, gym floor? Well, that's only 60,000, that's 60, I hate to say only, but it's 60,000 relative
Correct.
to the size of these other projects. But what's the condition of that floor?
I mean, it's in great condition still, but it needs to be.
It's gonna have to be replaced
Yeah,
at some
well,
time. Okay.
Yeah, for all the different things we're now doing, like pickleball and, all the we have all these different kind of lines and whatever else we do in there. I mean, so we've just got so much lines. In order to fix all that paint and everything, you have to redo the whole entire floor. So it's in good condition. How old is that floor?
20 is the original.
Yeah, the original floor for that was built, so,
Who's ever maintaining it's doing a darn good job. I
Yeah.
was on it a couple weeks ago, and I was surprised, because we had talked about it in council. And I was surprised at the condition of it. It was very good, but what you say is very relevant.
yeah.
To what's
We do
all
so
the
many different
increased
things now than we did 20
activity.
years ago, so in order to repaint it and do all that, so. I mean, is it urgent? Is it falling apart? No, it's not, but we do need to replace it.
At some point.
Yeah. And it's not gonna get any cheaper, so.
Well, if you added the amphitheater and that's about 450,000 more. And you had, what do you have, 1.3 you had?
I had 1.5 for the green things that are 10 years plus.
Okay, so that's another, so that gets you almost to $2 million.
Yeah.
And then you could include some of these smaller items and make sure you got the $2 million or
Yeah,
something like
maybe,
that.
yeah.
But for the cost of issuance, if you could get to 2.5 or 3 million, it might be better.
Yeah. I just want to be careful we don't put ourselves in a situation where there's no limiting principle. If we always say, well, it'll be cheaper to buy it now, then there's no stopping point. Because everything will be more expensive later.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to keep it under control.
Yeah, but eventually, at some point, you're gonna have everything you need replaced, and you won't start
We'll
that
think of-
cycle
we'll
again.
think
So
of
then,
new
at that
things.
point, then you're asking the question, is this new or is this replacing?
Yeah.
So the majority of stuff on here, it's all replacement stuff, so it's not anything new that we're adding. So at some point, you'll get to that where you're not replacing anymore,
Yeah.
or we won't have the need to replace, for a while,
Right, but even things that are like 10 years, let's say what's a good example? The fleet tire changer, that's a 10-year item. This is a tiny expenditure, so maybe not a great example, but it's a 10-year item, and we're talking about a 30-year CO.
Right, correct.
So we may have to pay for that one again before the CO's done. And that's a risk that maybe we won't
Right, that's a
take,
decision you guys would,
Right.
yeah.
but we don't,
Or if you
You
issue
need
for,
to look at what the cost is, when you use that example, you need to look at the cost of what that's gonna be in 15 years.
yeah, that's not a great one because it's so small.
Well, any of those apply, that same thing applies to all of
Right.
those.
Right, and we just don't,
Concrete's not gonna go down.
no, but nothing else is either. That's my point.
well, and you can do it, like I said, you don't have to do a 30-year note. I mean, you
That's
could
true.
do a
You do
20-year.
right?
Yeah, and
Most
then,
of this falls
you
under 20 anyway, right?
But don't we
Or
have to do that
honestly.
tonight? Like, aren't
Well,
we
you'd
kinda
have to
like-
make the budget decision tonight. We wouldn't, like he said, if we wanted to issue it the way we needed to issue it, we wouldn't issue until,
Till next year,
till,
that's right.
yeah, till 2023, till March of 2023. So, I mean, for budget purposes, for us to budget, yes. So we know that's payment's gonna come, you know, or the issuance costs and go through all that. So
Yeah.
for budget purposes, yes, but for, you know, making a decision, you guys aren't selling those COs tonight is,
Right.
No, the decision you'd be making is kind of the two different scenarios they worked up between the CO bond and the tax note. They gave us rough what our debt service payments would be that first year. So what we would need to commit to tonight is if we want to throw that and include that in our INS portion of the rate. That way you're asking for it now, even if we don't actually go out for the note
Right.
or the bond until,
Well, let me ask you this. Could you commit to, for example, $3 million tonight? And reflect that in the INS rate, what it's gonna do, and select the items later?
yeah.
yeah,
You could do that, right?
you certainly could.
You could, the council could agree that we're gonna do a, whatever it is, $3 million in CO tonight, say 20 years. Since most of these things are 20 years.
Well, if
And
we're,
then
sorry.
bundle whatever we wanna bundle
Into
at the
that.
next meeting, or we can think about it and bundle it the next meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
But if we're under that 3.65 on the 7-year tax note, would we prefer to go the 7-year tax note instead of the 30-year?
I don't think we wanna go tax notes, because that's gonna limit our ability to, what I understood, to limit our ability to.
It limits your capacity for future debt.
A bigger impact
So
to
that's
the
not a
budget.
consideration, I don't think.
Yeah, because if you'll notice on your 7-year tax notes, in the last couple of years, you're paying 500,000 a year, 1.3 and 1.3. So it limits your capacity until that 7 years is over. So,
And he said this was scalable, so if you look at the COs, of course, we don't know the 20-year, this is the 30-year.
This is
COs,
30-year
right?
scenario,
So
correct.
that's gonna accelerate the payment some, but it's still kind of scalable, so it looks like the annual payment for that might be a couple of $100,000 or something like that.
Correct.
For $3 million, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Could you possibly look up what a 3 million over 20 years would be?
Maybe.
I don't know if he's driving or not. I don't know if he's the one driving.
I know he was
Well,
going to Roy City,
yeah.
but.
Well, I mean,
I mean, just so we can look at different
If-
options of what it might.
Yeah, I was gonna,
Impact.
well, that kinda gets to the question I had, which is if we do that, say $3 million and we put that into the INS, what does that let us do with tax rate today? Would that let us drop it any?
well, it drops it by that, if you say there's $1.5 million, or.
There's
whatever you
1.3.
said,
1.3 in there right now.
1.3, it reduces, that takes, whatever it is, almost 5 cents out of the tax rate.
So we could,
Yes.
okay, so we could pull 5 cents out. Or 4, I guess.
And these,
Well,
everything
no,
in the
that's
green
not, no,
was
because it
listed.
increases the INS rate. We don't know how much that increases the INS rate. How much was it? But it was only.
It would increase the INRS, you know, a cent or two. If
Okay.
you're talking adding
So
200,000.
three
Net
or
is-
4 cents.
Your
maybe.
net is 4 cents, or 3 cents, right?
Yeah, that's what it
But
sounds
just
like.
keep in mind, all this was predicated on a level tax rate. If you remember, he didn't have this, in your
On
presentation,
the 5, 7, 8, 9.
on page 2, when you're talking about your capacity, this is all predicated on, you know, so if you lower your tax rate over here, then the next year we're gonna have to deal with the difference of that. Does that make sense? So you're adding capacity next year, but you're lowering the tax rate, so it's gonna come from somewhere. So just keep that in mind, that all this was done on that tax rate. So you lower that, then that lowers
In
your.
that far right column. So
Yeah,
see
that very far right column
far
there.
right column, I
Yeah.
have that's our kind of based off of
All these estimations are based on that, so,
that 579.
right,
Yeah, right,
right. So if we lower that, then that's all gonna change all that.
right.
So the
So-
question is whether or not to lower the tax rate now or have a lower tax rate later is the question. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, what you've done is by doing that, if you keep the tax rate the same, just like you're saying, you've created some capacity to do some things.
Mm-hmm. For future
And I personally-
projects.
For future.
I'll just tell you, I think employees are our most important asset, and I think our employees deserve more than a 5% cut this year. I think we need at least a 2% cost of living. Just saw on television, inflation is averaged at 8%.
Yeah, this year's 8, last year's
I
8.
just think, so you have that capacity to increase, and I think that 2% is about, $400,000, as I
Yeah,
recall.
yeah, cent and a half or so.
So that's $0.015 that you could use of that net 3 or 4, whatever you came up with, to increase some salaries for our employees.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say other things too that you can look at when you're thinking about keeping our tax rate at that 579. What y'all, I think the council decision you made last year, maybe the year before that, is you guys have also been lowering that target fund balance. So that might be something where we take advantage of, okay, if we're rolling some of this stuff into our INS rate, then if we do some of these other things like the mayor just suggested, essentially going from a 5% 7% merit raise to 2% full of 5% merit to 7%, then you could do things like climb up to that 7%, and then maybe we look at increasing our target fund balance as a security blanket for the
18
future.
or 19%.
Yeah, because you guys have driven it down to 17, so let's say, and I think I have a scenario queued up, exactly that of, okay, we can play with, let's maybe raise that security blanket back up, do some things for the employees as the mayor suggested, and then wrap up some of this stuff in our INS and off of our M&O. So I think when you look at all that, I think it would be a bad idea to go below that 579. I don't make that decision, y'all do though. But I think it would be smart to keep it at that level and kind of do some of those other things that we've been kind
But you could
of
get-
chipping away in the past.
You could also do all that you said and get to 569, right?
Did I say 569? I redact that in 579.
579.
Yeah.
I know you did.
And
Well, I'd like to see, I like to consider this, or I'd like to consider we do this. I
And
just think that we need to, I just always say it, I'll say two things that people get tired of, but I think employees are our most important asset. We're in the service business. We're in the customer service business. That's what we're in. And, I think when you see inflation at 8% and food items, all food items across the board are 15-16%, eggs, bread, milk, et cetera, I know it's impacting our employees, and I think we need to take that into consideration.
Absolutely.
I agree with you. We need to take care of our employees. We should do more of that.
So, I guess I'd like to suggest, if this is okay with the council, that we see what would happen with, $3 million on
20.
20 and 30-year financing, and how that impacts us, and how much we can stuff into this $3 million, let's say, to bundle up, I should say bundle up, right? Bundle up into this $3 million, which includes the $1.5 million or whatever it was, and then items from this. With, I'd like to suggest that we do the animal control outside area and the amphitheater, and add $25,000 to the kennel fund, whatever, make that $50,000. And then, as I think Councilman Thomas suggested, I think everybody agreed to try to do as much for police and fire as we can on those other items, and see where we end up.
I like that.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
You okay with that, Ben?
Yeah. Spending more than market. I get the logic. I'm worried about spending more money. That's the thing.
Well, some of that we're gonna have to spend at some point.
I know.
I understand your argument, but my point is that is going to be more expensive.
It's gonna be more or more less. So,
I know,
Are there some of these police items that can be out of the seizure funds?
I doubt it if they were placed on there, I don't know.
Yeah, there's some items on there. Like we've bought drones in the past with that, but we're on a drone replacement program, and then so we'd like to keep that in the budget. Usually Caesar funds is a one-time deal, and it's not anything you can take out of your budget and put in the seizure fund. And we bought in those in the past, but going forward we want them out of the budget because it's going to be a replacement. That technology changes too quickly. It's a 3 to 5 year, and then they're obsolete. You know how fast that goes. So that's why we put it in the budget this year, because we want to continue on a 5-year replacement with those. It's the same program we've done with the tasers as well.
Okay.
So, there could be a few things on there, but, other ones are just pretty small. And then you jump over to the tactical vehicle, and that's pretty large, so more than we have in seizure fund. Yeah.
Okay, if everybody's all right with that, we'll move on to the rate study. Did you want to say something?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm okay.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So we keeping the tax rate the same, correct? Is that what I'm hearing? Is
Yeah.
that the consensus?
Perhaps.
Under, perhaps? Okay, well, I guess I'll find out when we vote on it. So then we want to look at a 3 million, either a 20-year or 30-year note, and how that affects. So 3 million, and then we as staff will decide what goes in that 3 million as far as from this list?
no, I think we're gonna have to do another work session on that.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we made some suggestions. I mean, I think the staff could make some suggestions, and then we could start.
Well,
from
these
there.
are our suggestions,
Right.
so,
No, I think we're gonna have to have a work session on that.
okay.
Okay.
We could probably agree that all of the capital is.
Well, we gave them some general guidelines, so
Yeah.
why can't they come up with a suggestion? Put those in as a starting point. That's all I'm saying.
Deciding which of the white things are in and which ones are out is what I'm getting at. The stuff that's in the budget,
Then
we
we're
I
giving
don't
them some
have
general guidelines for that, so they can start
Yeah, so
with
they
that.
were just talking about going down in all the police
want, like,
items,
more
all the fire
specifics?
items.
yeah, I wanna be more specific.
So you want to keep everything that's in green, you're good with,
I'm good with all the stuff in green, yeah. And
even though some of it's the pay-as-you-go stuff? You don't want to take any of that and put some one-time things in there
We're
and
not
kick
gonna
that back over
Yeah,
to
I
the
know,
budget?
That's the thing. I mean, we gave them guidelines, but like, okay, so here's a 5 to 10 year on the AC replacement program, 50,000 a year. I
We'll
don't
ask
think
for
that's-
that, what I'm saying is we'll ask again for that next year.
Pay-as-you-go fire truck is not gonna be in there, right?
Well, that's up to you, that's what I'm asking you
Yeah.
guys. That's what I'm asking.
Right now, it's in there.
That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
right now, it's on that list, but
Right, and
it
she
wasn't
said-
included in what we discussed when we went by.
Right, you're saying the pay as you go stuff won't go in the CO.
Well, the pay-as-you-go fire truck, I thought we decided wouldn't go in there.
Would or would not?
Would not.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree
right.
with
Yeah,
that.
we agreed with that.
Okay.
From my perspective, I'm thinking it's the assets that are long lasting in the CO. So anything that's concrete, facility.
Even though it's something we're gonna ask you for every single year, because we will come back and ask you for the drainage improvements. We'll ask you for the pay-as-you-go fire truck funding, the valley gutter replacement, the AC replacement at 50,000 a year.
The drainage improvements is pay as you go? Okay,
yeah.
I didn't understand.
Yeah, we ask for 300,000 every year, and then we do just projects throughout the city for drainage.
How
That
far along are we on that pay-as-you-go for the fire truck? How much more do we need? How many
we
more?
replace in 2025
So
or
we've got
26.
So part of it is, we voted to do the platform
Yeah.
back in November, which we won't receive delivery on that. About 18 months from now. So, the target is to have 5 years between those apparatus, that's our target. That's gonna be a challenge
Yeah, because
this time, because it's taking so long.
it's taken so long to get that one. Yeah. So
Okay, so
2025.
we're not making payments till and escrowing money until we reach a point for that, is that right?
no, we are.
Okay.
Until last year, then we decided to lease. We used all the money we had saved up to go into our lease,
So
and
we're
then
starting over.
I mean,
I mean,
if you want to call it starting over, sure, certainly.
so we're
We're
not-
taking the pay-as-you-go right now to pay that lease until we paid extra on the lease because I don't
We can
remember.
talk about pay-as-you-go fire truck
So.
when it comes to work session. Okay.
So pay-as-you-go stuff in or out?
I think out.
Well, I think the issue is we decided we're gonna have a work session and discuss what goes in again.
Okay.
That's it, that's
Yeah, we
the
gotta do
answer, right? Okay.
okay.
Well, I was gonna have a work session. I guess the question was, should you guys give us a starting point on that if you wanted to? I'd be happy for you to do that myself,
I agree with that.
okay? Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is,
Water rate. So I believe where we left off with this, Chris Ekrit with New Gen had came and gave that presentation, and then one of the items of requested feedback was, I think, the mayor specifically and you as a council requested a third scenario here that kind of put us between that scenario 1 and scenario 2. So to reduce any kind of confusion, it doesn't necessarily go in order of 1, 2, and 3 from lowest to highest. So I'll just bring up that, skip straight to the chart that kind of, this is the main takeaway piece here of the, where our rates are currently at. Scenario 1 you'll see is kind of a little above that. Scenario 3, the new requested scenario, is then between 1 and 2. This is also all in some of kind of our regional in comparison. And then keep in mind too, at the same time that we're assessing and increasing our water and wastewater rates, a majority of these other cities on here are doing the exact same thing and undergoing this exact same process. So whatever you guys vote on and whatever we move forward with, it's very likely whatever we go with will still be towards the bottom of this chart. But bottom line is that scenario 3 number, which was requested, puts us between 1 and 2 there. And then this here would be your average residential. This is kind of looking at your average family, 3/4 inch, 5,000 gallon combined bill price. So what we have baked into kind of the fee change schedule of ordinance and the budget is depending which one of these scenarios you want to go with. And what this will accomplish, each of these 3 scenarios will all accomplish the same thing of getting our water, wastewater fund revenues where they need to be for us to cover kind of our current M&O expenses, as well as, I mean, y'all know that almost 3-page list of all the capital that we're going to need relatively quickly, and we need to get the revenue up to be able to support that and those future debt service payments for some of those larger ticket items. I think it was something like $175 million.
At least.
Yeah. So do you guys have any specific questions about the different scenarios, about anything like that, or is this enough information, the information that you all were looking for?
so in item, whichever it is, 6A, we will have to select one of those scenarios as we adopt the budget. So
Do any of those scenarios adequately fund the capital improvements you're talking about?
Obviously, scenario 2 is going to be your one that's going to fund it the most, obviously.
But is it enough?
Yeah, scenario 2, do you have that other?
well, I think they were all enough.
Which slide?
Right. The presentation.
Yeah, there's your, well,
No, I'll try to find the one that shows the.
and it shows your capital and if it covers it. And those are just, yeah, there you
This
go.
one.
Yeah, that's scenario 1. So if you look at, obviously it covers, expenses, your debt service coverage ratio it covers, but then you come down here to your reserves and it doesn't quite meet it there on scenario 1. If you look at scenario 2, obviously it gets a little bit better. And then obviously scenario 3 is going to be your best scenario.
Yeah, in scenario 3, again, to clarify, it's not lowest, middle, highest, it's lowest, highest, middle. So the scenario 3 is that newly requested kind of midpoint that was between scenario 1 and 2 that was first presented to you all.
Can you flip back to 2?
And you can also shift these projects around too. So, if you need to shift some, where it's lacking maybe in fiscal year 2025, you push those down to 26 and 27, where you have a little bit more capacity down there at the fund balance reserve. Or so you could shift these any way you wanted to, if you needed to.
Yeah.
So you could push anything you needed to a little bit further.
Can you go back to that previous slide?
Scenario 3.
Or scenario,
Well,
are you talking about the actual
Yeah, the
rates?
rate, yeah.
The actual rate
right
slide.
And, no, the next one. Next slide. Okay. And if you sum those across from 23 to 27, which I did, one of those scenarios generates more revenue than the other one over time.
Like your revenue is on the
And I
other.
don't think it's scenario 2. I think it actually was scenario 3. But I don't know how it doesn't make sense to me now, but I did that. Just to see cumulative, if you integrate all that.
Go back
across
to those gray
those
slides.
times,
No.
It seems like scenario 3 generated
Well,
more
there's your-
revenue for the city, and it didn't make sense to me.
Your revenues, Jerry, if you look, your revenues right there are in the red.
Yeah,
So that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 looks a little flatter. And then scenario 3 jumps up there in the middle. So it's just a little bit different
okay.
with the way they're doing it. And they most likely, if you look at probably 2024, yeah, without getting into the weeds too much, they probably
Do you have
move
a
some.
recommendation?
Do I have a
Now,
recommendation?
which one?
I mean, obviously, we have a lot of capital, that we need. So, I mean, the one that's going to raise enough to be able to sustain that, you want
And
it to
2
be
or 3
sustained.
does that, right?
Yeah, 2 or 3. 2 or 3 is, they're good
If
scenarios.
3 is enough and it's a lower rate for customers, then that seems like the obvious choice.
Okay.
I mean, that's
That
y'all's
makes sense.
decision.
It is enough.
If it's truly enough, then
I mean,
choose
we-
the lower rate.
Yeah, right. Mhm. That's right. So, have we decided without voting? If you look back at that slide, I
Yeah.
don't know why, one of the other of those generated more revenue over that 5-year period than the other, because unless I summed it
You
up
may not
wrong.
have
and-
to-
No, 'cause it's
I
all-
was surprised.
The total
Yeah,
over 5 years?
total revenue was more. I think it was scenario 3 was more, even though it was a lower, which was kind of a dichotomy. Well, kind of went against what I expected. So I'd say scenario 3 myself.
Yeah, but isn't there that other slide that shows the rate increases over time?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it was on the other side, on the other one. But if you looked at it in the first presentation that he gave, he did a scenario, this is what we'd raise them this year, and then this is what we'd have to raise them 2024, 2025, which we were going to raise the bulk of it this year because we're so far behind. But then the next couple of years, it could be different based on what capital projects we've told them.
And that's why the revenue.
And that's why the
might have been
revenue
different,
might
right?
have been different,
Okay, well,
correct?
I think scenario 3 was more, but it was less.
Because they didn't always,
Yeah.
in their calculations, they didn't always raise it every single,
Yeah.
the same
I was
amount
gonna
or
ask why
percentage
the
every
graphs
single time.
Diverge like that. So
Because, yeah, they did it based on the capital. So it was in in your first presentation that you have, if you go back and look at that, you can see the progression of the rate increases over each one of the scenarios, and that's what changed based on, and that's what they would, working with staff, that we said, no, we need to do this in 5 years, we need to do this in 3 years. So that's how they they built that model out based on that. And so, in order to make it fit all the debt service coverage and cover expenses, they had to do some in other years and more, so like they front end loaded it on one of them maybe, and then back in they leveled it off a little bit more. So, but that was on on your first presentation that you guys have. So if you look at that, then that's why the graph changes.
Oh, it looks like it's scenario 3 then, I guess. So, the council have any questions about that? Okay, so, proposed budget, we're here. City manager, you got any more for us to discuss? Those are the items, right?
Yeah, the only other
That's-
thing that I did put together that I wanted to run
Oh, yeah,
by you
that's right.
guys is I just have a quick presentation regarding the 30% cost of living adjustment in the proposed budget for retirees, just so that we're all on the same page of what exactly that is. And, we're all on the same page on that. It's 3 slides, pretty brief. So 30% cost of living adjustment, pretty much what we didn't want there to be any kind of misconception is let's say someone's retiree paycheck is $100. it's not exactly a 30% increase of what they currently get.
Right.
It has to do with CPI increases and all that, so I just wanted to make sure we go through that and have that discussion. So if you receive a COLA, your annuity benefit may increase, and it's based on the change of increase in CPI from the date you retired to the date of the cost of living adjustment.
It's a specific CPI also.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, it is the.
Very specific, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I might have it up there, I might not, but
Yeah,
yes.
you
it
don't
is
have the
It's the
specific
CPIU value.
Right.
And then this is just kind of in its, gives an example on the right. I'm not going to sit here and read it out to y'all. But these are kind of the main highlights of each of them. You know, a city may choose one of 3 COLA amounts, so we didn't just pull that 30% out of thin air. TMRS gives you the option to do 30, 50, or 70, and then we as a staff discussed, and I think we even had input from a subcommittee to move forward with that 30%. And then that second bullet point there discusses how it's that consumer price index for all urban consumers, CPIU. And then a city ordinance is required for a city to ever discontinue the annually repeating COLA. So even though you as a council will decide to move forward with this, a future city council may decide to discontinue it at any point. Again, that's a council decision though. And when a city discontinues the COLA option, so if that were to be discontinued in the future, I think here is an example of one who did drop it from 70% to 30. Of what that does is once a retiree's annuity is set and it's increased, it'll never drop below that point. So whatever, like let's say a retiree benefits from this decision and it increases their annuity, excuse me, it'll never drop from that point forward if the council decides to remove the repeating COLA. Yeah, any previous COLAs that were granted are all retained by the retiree. Only future COLAs are eliminated when a city elects to discontinue the COLA. So I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page on that, because I don't think we ever fully sat down as a city council and all reviewed this outside of the subcommittee.
This is the first COLA that we've had since 2009, is that correct? Is
That's
that
correct.
That sounds right.
And so this year's COLA represents, I guess, a lot of catch-up for that, over that 10-year period, and it's roughly $402,000.
To the general fund overall, when
Right.
you're talking across juice.
Impacts that, right? And it's across juice also, right?
Yeah, when you're talking about that
Across everybody, all
total, yeah.
employees.
Across all the funds, it's closer to 650,000.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
But juice will pay their share.
Correct.
Correct.
That's
And you have the
all.
water and sewer fund as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
for
we've got all those employees
So
that are on
the
that
general fund
side.
is $402,000.
Correct.
Okay. So then, next year, if we continue this COLA, what might it be? If it's
Oh.
repeating?
I mean,
I don't know. We'd have to see. I mean,
Well, it's
obviously,
not
right
another
now our percentage.
$400,000, right?
Well, I mean, obviously our percentage right now, it went from 11% to 16%. So they give us, they do all of the calculations and everything like that. And then it could go down to 15%. It could stay at 16%. It could, I mean, it could go up. Now, if it goes up, obviously, then that's another increase. Or if it stays at 16%, then we're paying the same that we paid last year. So there wouldn't be any increase. So that we don't know. We won't know that until TMRS. I mean, they have actuaries that run all this information and look at, I mean,
Well, if we adopt the COLA this year, do we have to adopt it as a repeating COLA? Or
No,
we
you
do
can
at
adopt
one
it.
time?
You can adopt it as an ad hoc COLA, but that has that's a different conversation that we'll need to have. Because then that affects, if you continue to do an ad hoc COLA, then that affects your financial statements and where you have to put this financial and this liability, because it doesn't pre-fund anything.
Okay.
You're just catching up from previous times. You're not pre-funding anything. So then after you do two ad hoc COLAs, once you do that, then it jumps onto your financial statements. Then we're talking about it affecting our rates for borrowing in the future. So, because you're just catching up if you do an ad hoc COLA every 2 years, but after you do it that second time, then that's when it starts jumping into a different spot on your financial
Okay.
statement and reporting purposes, because you're just catching up at that
So
point.
we'll adopt this as a repeating COLA, but the council next year, if they wanted to discontinue it, they could.
They certainly could, yeah, they'd have to do it by ordinance, but yeah, they certainly could.
Okay.
or at any point in the future.
Yeah, or any point in the future, they could discontinue it, and I
Why
think,
has it been so long since we did one of those?
I can't answer that question.
Outstanding question.
Probably, my
Somebody here
guess,
Old enough to know, right?
my guess would be the cost.
Not me.
I mean, you're investing $600,000 at one time, so that money just kept getting more and more and more. So, I mean, my guess would be the cost. I mean, I can't speak to before I was here, but I would assume it was because of the cost. And, you know, initially catching up and doing all that's a big investment, so it was just never put in the budget.
Well, we're doing a big catch-up now, right?
Correct. Yeah.
We're doing that across a lot of categories. Catching up.
And
Yeah.
then, this is the last slide I have here, and this just kind of shows you what exactly, because, you know, that's a large number you're deciding on as far as what this total cost is going to be to the city, and this is the impact to our retirees. So we received this information from TMRS, and I did kind of a breakdown of what that would do. So on average, per our 330 retirees, you're talking about an impact of 76, 73 average increase per individual in their annuity per month. The median is 4209, maximum of 497.56, and then there's a few minimums that were 0, but if you remove those, 18 cents, and then that chart on the right kind of shows you, breaks down in the ranges of, you know, 122 or 102 retirees are going to see their monthly amount increase in the $0 to $20 range. 77 of them will see that in the $20 to $50 range, and then so on and so forth. I just thought this was good information for you guys to see, because you've just been hearing, you've just been hearing TMRS and then that price tag, that 600,000, but this is exactly what it would do for the retirees.
Any questions? If there are no questions, do you have anything else?
I mean, I know we talked about the capital items. Everything else that was proposed is okay to stay the way it was. That'd be my only other question.
Possibly a 56.9 tax rate.
He's
that-
good.
That's y'all's decision, not our decision.
It's okay to
So-
laugh. He was good.
When this,
I don't know that I was
what
kidding.
else?
While we have the time, do we want to just open that up and play with it? Because we can live plug in all this now.
That's up to them if they want to do. I mean, they're not gonna.
This increase, this cost of living will apply also to police and fire, except it'll just be 7% across the board if we adopt that, right?
That is correct, because they are
No
civil
merit,
service.
okay.
Yeah, they are not held by the merit, police and fire are not.
But it will apply to
So,
them
so
also.
in the budget, we want 7% for the cost of, 2% cost of living, 5% merit. Is that correct? Okay, I see head nods, okay. That's my only other question, because that's the only other kind of big ticket item besides the retiree. Everything else, you know, was the M&O side was okay, so. And all the additions of personnel, all of that is okay? Okay. That's all that's all we need to know.
One thing, and I think I've recently looked at this, some companies are offering an ability to retain staff. They're now offering retirees bonuses to stay for another year. For example, if I wanted to retire, and I wonder, could that bonus pool, I think it's $100,000, is that what we allocated this year in the budget?
Correct.
I wonder if the council would consider, I mean, I don't know if those opportunities come up, but if you had some employee that you really wanted to keep, that wanted to retire, could you use some of those funds to incentivize them to stay another year? Do you feel like that's within that, do you have that guidance within that?
I mean, that'd be up to
money?
council. When we approved that, we approved it on the premise that they would be for sign-on bonuses and retention bonuses. I mean, if you want to call it a retention bonus, then certainly we could do that. But, you know, we called it retention, sign-on bonuses, retention, and spot bonuses was what we saved that $100,000 every year, or put in the budget every year for, which we put in again this year. So that would be up to, I would think, you know, if we had some, the blessing of council to do that, then we certainly could. To use that, or just add that to that 100,000.
Yeah. So the question is whether or not we could use those
Just-
funds
To
for.
retain an employee. To retain a
Retirement.
retiree.
Retiree. We've used the retainage,
How would that, in pragmatic terms, what's the difference between a retainer bonus and a retiree bonus?
well, because if you have somebody that's not eligible to retire, but you still want to retain them, you don't want them to take another job somewhere else. That's where we've used the retention bonuses. But if somebody's like, hey, I'm going to retire in January, well, hey, I'll offer you this if you wait until.
Wouldn't that still be just a retainer bonus? I'm not sure I understand the distinction, really.
I mean, it's still a retaining bonus,
Yeah,
correct?
Sherry says yes.
Well, yeah, but it's still a
Sherry says it's the
retention.
Well, they would still be getting paid the amount that, plus
But they're good.
7% possibly, but they would just get a bonus on top of that. And that's still, we would have paid someone else if someone would have come in and taken that position.
Probably most likely somebody cheaper too, though. So,
Well, there may be
and
a
some,
special
and,
incident.
and some of our employees that have been here for a really long time, they're gonna make more in retirement than, so if we wanna, I mean, that's the parameters that I think council would need to direct us if we can go, how high we could go. If you want me to
So is
spend
this a
that.
question of adding more to the funds, or a question of how we use the funds?
I think both, if you wanna add more to the funds and then allow us, we've never talked about using them for retirees before, so.
I kind of want to stop adding.
I mean, that would be y'all's
Well,
decision.
I just wanted to say, in the event that you had a retiree that you want to incentivize to stay, you could use that pay bonus. That's all I want, that's what I wanted to talk about. I didn't want it's increase that amount.
Yeah, okay.
That wasn't what I suggested. So did we decide anything?
I think we decided that the funds, I mean, according to Sherry, a retainer bonus is a retainer bonus.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we decided something. Okay, if there are no other issues, we will go into executive session, and we'll return here at 6 o'clock. Hopefully before then.
I'm having a brain freeze. What's the name of the road that Jerry lives on? Starts with a B.
Bethel?
I just kept.
You said it just went out of your brain?
session of the Greenville City Council, September the 13th, 2022. Call this meeting to order. Thank you for coming tonight. And I'll ask you to join us and then stand and join us in the invocation with Samuel Dew, the pastor of Mount Olive Baptist Church. Mr. Dew, please come forward. Thank you.
Let us bow for a prayer. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you, Lord, for this day. We thank you, God, for this assembled city council. We pray, oh God, for our mayor. We pray, oh God, for those on the city council board and civil persons. We pray, oh God, that you would help us to get through this agenda. We pray, oh God, for peace. And thank you, God, once again for hearing our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We have a number of presentations tonight, but first of all, we'd like to, for Judge Stovall to come forward and give the oath of office to T.J. Goss, our newest council member from Place 2.
All right, raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, T.J. Goss,
I, T.J. Goss,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of City Council Member Place 2
of City Council Member Place 2
of the City of Greenville,
the City of Greenville,
and will, to the best of my knowledge, my ability,
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck.
John Turner to come forward. We have a number of proclamations tonight. Okay, the first one is regards September 11th, and y'all aware of that. Whereas on September 11th, 2001, terrorists attacked our country, causing immense damage, tragic loss of 3,000 lives in Washington, D.C., New York, and Pennsylvania. Whereas citizens have always united in our resolve to protect our freedom, and whereas throughout our history, Americans have shown the world that we are a nation of people who will overcome any act of terrorism and vanquish any foe who may threaten or cherish our way of life. Whereas the United States of America stands as a symbol of freedom, defender of democracy throughout the world, and the compassion that arose in the hearts and minds of the American people still serves as the ultimate rebuke to the evil of those who attacked us. Therefore, we present you this proclamation on this date of September 11th, 2001. Thank you. I have another proclamation for National Prisoner of War and Missing in Action Recognition Day. Whereas the National POWMIA Recognition Day is observed on the third Friday in September, and whereas there are 1,597 American personnel listed by Defense Department POWMIA office as missing and unaccounted for, and whereas many Americans take time to remember those who were prisoners of war and those who are missing in action as well as their families, whereas the National League of Families and POWMIA flag symbolizes the United States' resolve to never forget POWs or those who serve their country in conflicts and are still missing. And we present you this proclamation today also, which we appreciate it very much. And I have a third proclamation for September, to observe September the 25th as Gold Star Mother's Day. Correct. Whereas the Gold Star Mother is a tradition that began during World War I. Service flags were flown by military families with blue stars for every family member serving in a uniform. And if that loved one died, the blue star was replaced by a gold star. That started in World War I. Whereas the Gold Star Award commemorates the tragic death of a military member who has perished while in the line of duty. Whereas Gold Star Mothers and Family Day falls on the last Sunday in September. This year, it happens to be the September the 25th of 2022. It is designated as Gold Star Mother's Day, and we present this proclamation to you also. Would you like to say anything? And Mr. Turner, of course, served on our city council for 3 years and is very active in our Veterans Affairs and veteran support in our community.
Yes,
Would you like to say anything?
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
And myself, as a disabled veteran, the Disabled American Veterans Organization, and all those serving, those gone, and the families surviving, thank you, and we try to keep their memories alive.
Okay.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much. You may want to mention the Veterans Day Parade is when? November the 4th?
5th.
5th, okay.
Lineup is 9 a.m. Parade starts at 10. Hope to feed the veterans out at Majors Field.
Okay.
And should be a great day.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. You will notice in your agenda there are placeholders for citizens to be heard and public testimony. Citizens to be heard are invited to address the council on topics that are not already scheduled for public hearing or listed on the agenda. Public testimony will begin with item 7A tonight on your agenda. And if you'd like to address the council, you need to complete a citizen's comment card and present it to the city secretary. Are there citizens to be heard?
James Evans.
James Evans, 6410 Buena Vista Drive, Greenville, Texas, 75402. I'm here tonight basically, I guess, for a public information announcement here. A couple of weeks ago, we all received these. The state of Texas required each county tax assessor to distribute these cards. In the back of it says Notice of Estimated Taxes. The CAD site, some people have trouble. It's very more intricate as far as what it has. This has the basic facts. And so for the council members, for the people in the audience, especially people out in Facebook land and in Harold Banner land, I want to make them aware again, this card, and I'm going to give this address now. If you get a pencil, I'll announce it again before I sit down. And that is hunt.countytaxrates.com. And when you type that in, it comes a place to search, and all you have to enter is the name of the person. You can enter your address, or you can enter the property number. And again, I've had a lot of friends making use of this. It's a great tool to compare your property to similar properties in town. And it's not as detailed as what the CAD site has, but it's a very quick tool to use and a very simple tool. There's no sign-in, no passwords, no nothing. You just do it. And again, it'll give you a chance to look at other properties maybe similar to yours, and then next year, if it comes time to question your values, it'll give you some facts to go by. Also, it also can be used on anybody living in Hunt County, which means, again, you could take Greenville ISD elected officials, you can take city council elected officials, you can take anybody elected officials or anybody that lives in the country or in the county and look up what their taxes are. It shows the freeze is highlighted in blue, and so it's got valuable information. And information is a good tool to have. Thank you very much. Got a minute, 8 seconds left, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Evans, would you repeat that web address again?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I said to do that, and I didn't. I was watching the clock up there. It's hunt.countytaxrates.com. And I'm looking at it on the back of the card. I've got some eye issues. Let me look at it again to be sure I've got you the correct thing right here. That's why I wrote it off big for that. Yes, and it is hunt.county tax, RATES.com. And that's all together with no spaces. It's the simplest tool I've seen yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Are there other citizens to be heard?
John Kelsa.
John Kelso, 6005 Horn Drive, Greenville, 75402. I'm reading tonight from the comprehensive plan, the recently approved city comprehensive plan, land use guidance. Currently, minimal retail uses are located near residential areas. Consider neighborhood retail uses near future retail developments. Existing retail land uses are located along Wesley Street, a major retail corridor, and Joe Ramsey. Consider promoting future retail infill development opportunities in FM 1570 Jack Finney Boulevard. Just a couple of months, not that long ago, a couple of months ago, you guys approved a zoning change from SF2 to SF3 right here on 1570 up on the north end, right beside the vet hospital. But at the same time, the developer had carved out just a little piece of retail right there along 1570. So you were changing the zoning from going to a smaller lots, but making a little bit of retail there. Traders Road has a lot of residential development going on right now, but there's also, the developer has carved out a little bit of retail right there on 1570. I keep reading in the paper, I think looks like there's a bunch of land down on South 1570 that keeps coming up in and out for a zoning change. And I think I saw in the paper it's coming up again here not too long, going from ag to single family. And I don't know, it appears like it's going to be all neighborhood, all single family. So if and when that comes up, I'm not going to come down here and say anything, I promise. I'm trying to be proactive. I'm trying to be, say my piece first. But it seemed like I wish somebody from the city would talk to the developer and ask them to pull that plan off until you can come back with an acre or two or just a little bit, something along the frontage of 1570, carve it out for retail. I don't know what the rules are. I think if he comes along and it's disapproved, I think it's a year before he can come back. So somebody ought to maybe talk to him and say, look, pull it now. Don't get, so you don't get voted down. Pull it now and come back with something with a little carve out of retail along 1570. Not because John Kelso thinks it's a good idea, because you guys think it's a good idea. And that's what you've told everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelso. Are there other citizens? Okay. Okay, tonight we're going to adopt the budget, and before we start those public hearings, there are 3 of those. I want to make a statement to compliment the council, the city staff, and make a statement to the citizens. The city's council's been working with city staff on the budget for the past 6 months based on 2022, 2023 goals and objectives that were established by the council. We received presentations from every city department, including departmental staffing requests. I want to commend the city manager and her staff for addressing our concerns and providing the visibility and tools needed to meet our goals. In addition, I'd like to address citizens regarding Greenville's future, which I consider to be very, very bright. Regarding taxes and tax rates, the City Council has reduced the actual tax rate 11 cents in the past 5 years, from 69.9 to 58.9 cents per $100 valuation. During that same time, we adopted what was then called the effective rate, and subsequently the effective rate minus 1/2 cent, which meant no year-over-year tax increase, or in the second case, a slight reduction in taxes for most taxpayers. And that has never been done before, at least not in the last 40 years. I think that's important to know as we set a tax rate tonight, that we have been, this council and previous councils have been focused on the tax rate. During that same period, the council absorbed approximately 9 cents in tax increases for citizens-approved street bonds. In total, then, the tax rate has been reduced approximately 20 cents in the last 5 years. Taxes last year in 2021-2022 increased $21 on a $100,000 home, and taxes are expected to increase around $55 this year with the adoption of the 2023 budget. So in total, we will have increased taxes about $75 over 2 years on a $100,000 home. That same home, according to our TAV, appreciated approximately $13,000 during that same period. So think about that. And I think sometimes people confuse, our city taxes represent about 25% of the total taxes that you pay, the four taxing entities in the county. Greenville is growing, and like any growing business, growth consumes cash. In addition, Greenville has infrastructure that has not been maintained for the past 40 or 50 years. We're trying to catch up, and we haven't always built infrastructure that lasts. A good example is the 60-year-old raw water line from Lake Tawakoni that breaks 3 or 4 times a year. Each of those breaks cost us about $100,000 annually. Our fire administration building, if you haven't seen it, was built over 60 years ago. The conditions of it are abysmal. I was there today for a meeting. Building blueprints, which we have to maintain, the fire department has to maintain, are stored in a stairwell. One of the city council goals is to build infrastructure for greater sustainability, but that requires investment in infrastructure, when in turn consumes cash. It is financially challenging to balance both growth while upgrading existing and catching up on an existing infrastructure that has not been consistently maintained over many years. In May 2021, our citizens overwhelmingly approved street improvements which were made possible by leveraging low interest rates using payments from the annual street improvement fund of $2 million a year to amortize $50 million in street bonds without increasing taxes. We did that without increasing taxes. In many cases, the utilities underlying these major connecting streets require replacement. Those bonds were sold at historically low rates, just slightly over 2%. Fortunately, we were able to lock in mill and overlay costs for this work to minimize most of the impact of inflation. I believe, like any business, people are our most important asset. Restructuring medical benefits reduced our cost over $1 million during that time, but we continue to see increases year over year. This year, fortunately, we didn't see an increase in our medical insurance premiums. Employee turnover and retirements are costly for any business. In that regard, the city is focused on keeping our salaries competitive in the face of rampant inflation and the inability to find workers who are compensated by the federal government to stay home rather than be employed. And that is a challenge for us, is keeping workers. We normally, I learned today that normally we have about 20 openings in our city on a continuing basis. In June, the City Council approved an additional homestead exemption above and beyond the senior freeze of 10% of the appraised value, but no less than $5,000, which will benefit over 4,500 homeowners in our city, especially those on fixed incomes, most affected by gas, which has improved a little bit in the last month or so, food prices, and runaway inflation. City retirees have not had a cost of living adjustment, a COLA, since 2009. As currently proposed, the budget includes a COLA increase to offset inflationary pressures for those who spent their careers serving our citizens. Taken together, these extraordinary costs, these costs are not common to most budgets, are estimated to increase expenditures for this year's budget almost $1 million. It's $533,000 for the homestead exemption and $402,000 for the COLA. And that in itself represents about 4 cents on the tax rate. Today's work session included a rate study presentation by a wastewater consultant that clearly shows Greenville rates to be the lowest among comparison cities or competitive cities in our area. We were absolutely the lowest. Tonight we will be adopting a scenario which will correct our financial condition with our water and wastewater enterprise fund. As I mentioned, I think the City Council's been working on the budget since early April. Working together, the council has been focused on investing in Greenville to make it more viable long-term. In that regard, we are asking the citizens to invest also. I think every member of this City Council cares about the direction of our city and is committed to balancing the challenges that come our way. To borrow on a suggested mantra from my good friend Jerry Spate, great communities are built by people who care. And it is this caring attitude that will carry us to a bright future. And I want to thank you very much, the council, for the way we work together on this budget. And I think it's important for the citizens to know some of the history behind our budgeting process the last few years. Thank you very much. So at this point, we'll move to item 6A, public hearing of the proposed budget and consideration and action on ordinance adopting a budget and fee schedule changes for the ensuing year beginning October 1st, 2022. And I'll open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak in favor or in opposition to this item? Nobody has, okay. So I think during the work session, we discussed major changes we'd like to make to the budget. I have one minor change I wasn't kidding about. I'd like to make the tax rate 56.9. I don't know if the council is interested in doing that or not, but I think that is another thing that I'd like to recommend. I don't know if there's any traction for that, but if there is, I'd like to make that suggestion, and we adopt the budget at a tax rate of 68.9. 56.9. Thank you very much. Thank you. And with the other items that we discussed in work session. So is there a motion in that regard? Well, we can. I'll make the motion, which includes up to $3 million of financing to bundle a number of capital improvement items and adopting, I believe we decided on scenario 3 for water rates, and adopting, I guess, we received a presentation on COLA. I don't think there was any changes there. It was just for informational but adopting the COLA. And then I would like to include a 2% across the board increase for employees, which raises, including the 5% merit. So 2% across the board cost of living increase and 5% merit for our employees in that. I think that covers everything. Is that correct?
You didn't mention the tax rate.
And, well, I did earlier.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. And a tax rate of 56.9. Yeah.
And up to 3 million can be either 20 years or 30 years, whatever best fits
And we'll
with
decide
the
that in
scenario.
work session. Yeah, we'll decide that in a work session the next time. Is that okay? Is that what your question?
Well, in order to make the budget work, I need to know
You gotta pick one.
if you want me to do it in 30 years, obviously it's going to be a different payment than the 20-year to fit in the budget. So you want to give me?
You have to know that tonight.
Well, I just need to know if you want to fit it in the 20-year or 30-year. I have the option to do either one. So I think if you make
Let's
the
do it with
motion.
20, because that music with the higher payment. If we want to go down, we can always go down.
Correct.
Okay, so we can bundle less if we want to.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Does that cover everything? Dude, is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve your suggested
thought you made-
number of 56.9.
Wouldn't it be a second? You made the motion.
No, I've suggested, well, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever,
You
okay,
just
I'll
made
make
the
a motion then.
motion.
I'll consider that as a motion then,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay, then I second it.
It's unusual for the chair to make a motion, I think.
You're allowed to.
So you're allowed to.
For this board, not for other city boards. But for this board,
Okay, well then consider that a motion, please.
Any public testimony? Or public hearing? Okay.
And there's a second, so please vote.
Point it that way.
That's where she's trying.
I know, I see her. I can hear
I
it.
see your thumb
I
there.
feel like I'm bogan.
You pushing the green? There it goes.
Did you finally vote? You were finally able to vote? Okay, it passes unanimously. Okay, item 6B, consideration action authorizing the ratification of the fiscal 2022-2023 budget that does not raise property taxes.
It does.
That does raise more property taxes than the fiscal year 2021-22 budget. So Is there, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak either in favor of or in opposition to this item 6B? If not, I'll close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the council?
We authorize, we ratify this budget.
Ratify the tax.
Motion second, please vote.
What's wrong with your battery?
So you're voting for it? Is that, so, okay, so we'll move on. It passes. You are voting for it, is that correct?
Yeah, she gave a thumbs up.
Okay, I didn't see it. Okay, so it passes unanimously. Item 6C, public hearing on the proposed tax rate and consideration action authorizing an ordinance adopting the 2022 tax rate for the fiscal year. I'll open the public hearing. Does anyone like to speak either in favor or opposition to this item, 6C? There being no one, I'll close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the council?
Okay, we have to have specific language, and GP's getting that
Okay.
with the amended tax rate.
Okay.
Those mics are, the way I calculated it, was I plugged in .569 for the 2022 tax rate,
Yeah.
and then that's effectively a decrease of
Yeah.
minus .02, which is a decrease of
Yep.
negative .172%.
So this is negative.
Do you want me to go up there and read it, or?
No, they have to make the motion.
Who would like to make?
Who's gonna make the motion?
Is that it right there?
Yep, you make it, Rick.
It's big enough that I can read it, thank you. Okay, I move that the property tax rate be decreased by the adoption of a tax rate of well, that could have been a little larger, 569, which is effectively a minus 1.72% decrease in the tax rate.
Second. Motion second, please vote. I caught you that time. And it passes unanimously. Moving on to item 7, so we've adopted a budget. It's a wonderful thing.
Yay.
Moving on to item 7A, consideration and action on an ordinance extending a contract agreement between Daniel Reyes, city attorney for the city of Greenville, and this essentially just extends his contract for another year. And I asked Daniel if he wanted to, you have any comments on this, or your?
No, I'm not asking for any sort of raise or change in the financial terms at this time. We generally do that at the time of the other officers' raises. So if you accept this, it would stick with the exact same monthly flat rate that we do, keep everything else the same, just extend it one additional year.
So really, it's we're extending 2 years essentially. Is what
Well,
we'll extend 1 year and a 1 year rolling, yeah, right, yeah. Just so everybody will understand, okay? Are there any questions for Daniel regarding that? Okay,
I'd like to make a comment.
okay.
I think we're extremely lucky to have a guy like Daniel working with us. And I know how much hard work you put in when you give us those late night texts and phone calls, so I thank you personally for all you do for us.
I do too. I would echo that. Okay, I need to open this up for public testimony. Is there anyone who'd like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this item 7A? There being no one, what is the pleasure of the council?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. Item 7B, consideration and action on ordinance authorizing a professional services agreement with Bartlett West for engineering for the design of a new water treatment plant.
Good evening.
Chris, how are you
Yes,
tonight?
sir. Fine, thank you. We need to get started on the design of our second water treatment plant. We're almost getting behind schedule on it, so I'm here tonight to ask you to go ahead and move forward with the preliminary design and also our preliminary talks with TCEQ to get this thing on track. And our ultimate goal is, and I shouldn't say this because I'll be held to it, is we're going to try to make water by December 2025. So every month, every day is critical to us, so we'd definitely like to get started on this.
Okay. Are there any questions for press?
Remind me again, where's that location, proposed location?
Yeah, you can say. Well, it's to the east of town, south
Yeah.
of the interstate.
I'm sorry, I remember now. I do, thank you.
Okay.
That second grin, I got it.
I want to make sure I didn't say something I wasn't supposed to.
I wasn't trying to
Okay.
trick you.
Are there any other questions for press? Okay, I'll open this up for public testimony. Is there anyone like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this item 7B?
James Evans.
Okay.
James Evans, still 6410 Buena Vista Drive, Greenville, Texas, 75402. When I look back in the packet, I know the agenda itself doesn't have it, but it even lists page 124 in the packet that y'all have made public on the internet. On 124, it says this is a $300,000 expenditure on this initial phase of this. All I want to need to know is, did we go out to bid when we selected Bartlett West? Thank y'all for your time.
I can address that. We are not able to bid out professional engineering services. It's against Texas law. We select them based upon their qualifications.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor or opposition to this item 7B? Being no one, I'll close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the council?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion is second, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Item 7C, consideration and action on an ordinance authorizing an increase in the amount of $700,000 for additional meters and boxes from Core and Main. Chris?
Yes, sir. This is our water meters. As we use them up, we have to keep replenishing that, and we do get fees for new water meters. So what we're asking for is to replenish this account so we can continue to buy the meters and boxes we need for the new development and all we're doing.
Okay. Are there any questions for press regarding this item?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Okay.
So this is just to keep the fund funded?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. We take monies in for it, but then we have to ask for permission to increase the expenditure side to be able to purchase the additional meters and boxes.
So does this involve a fund transfer?
It's just freeing up part of that fund balance of wastewater fund that is unused, and you're just increasing that expense account. And then a majority of this will be covered by a corresponding revenue account, because like Press said, as we get the need to replace these meters and boxes, we're getting the revenues, and then this year, I think, there was kind of a combination of the supply chain and inflation of why we're seeing so much more money needed to fulfill that expense.
What's the current fund balance there?
Oh, shoot,
Roughly, I don't need the dollar.
Oh, roughly?
Yeah.
I think someone can give you an exact number there, because I don't want to misquote it.
Beginning fund
Balance for when we're budgeting for next year is about 1.2 million, so.
So this is more than covered.
Yeah.
Are these, do you have other questions?
That's it.
Are these automated meters? You can, like,
They can be adapted to the automated meters. We're having trouble with the radio read sensors that we get. They're 81 weeks out. So as soon as we get them, it's not much to adapt to put the radio
Are we
read onto
adapting
it.
them as we get them?
Sir,
Are we adapting them?
as soon as we get them in, we put them in.
Okay.
But we have them on order.
We're moving eventually toward a fully automated water distribution system.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Okay, are there other questions for the council, from the council?
Just have one question.
Okay.
Is this a typical average amount for what you would request yearly?
Generally, yes, somewhere around $700,000-800,000 is what we spend. But like I said, we've had supply chain issues and we've had tremendous cost increases. Most of these meters are brass, and brass is like doubled and tripled in price. So,
Thank you.
Are there other questions? If there are none, I will open the public testimony. Anyone like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this item 7C? There being no one, I'll close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the council?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion? Motion and second, please vote. Does that help too?
Yeah, when I keep it right here, it won't do nothing. It don't like me.
Okay, and it passes unanimously. Item 7D, consideration and action on an ordinance authorizing construction contract with Mesa Contracting LLC for stormwater discharge piping and project. Press.
yes, sir, this is out at the water treatment plant. We rely on wastewater pumps to keep our plant from going underwater and control the water. And we pump this groundwater and stormwater back into one of the reservoirs so we can reuse it. We recently have received our 2 new stormwater pumps we ordered almost a year ago. But with the configuration of these new pumps, we had to change the discharge piping to allow these to work properly. And what this does is allows us to do that piping modification so all the pumps work and it does what it's supposed to do.
Okay, are there any questions for press regarding this issue? From the council, there being none, I'll open the public hearing, or public testimony, I'm sorry. Does anyone like to speak either in favor or opposition to this issue? There being no one, is there a motion from the council?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Motion? There's a second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. I'd like to ask the city secretary to read the consent calendar, please.
Mr. Mayor, may I take 1 minute from you and I have something I'd like to say to council.
Yes.
Recently, during this drought cycle, I want to say with the money and the foresight this council and previous councils have given us, we held our own. We did not have to do restrictions. We asked for conservation from people, but we held our own. We were able to pump, at one couple of days, we pumped out over 10 million gallons of water. So I just wanted to thank this council and thank my staff for their tremendous amount of work. They work night and day to keep that plant running, provide the water to our citizens. And I just say it was the foresight and thanking y'all for putting your trust in us and supplying the money to do the improvements we needed to keep this plant going. And I just wanted to take this time to thank y'all for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you also.
Thank you.
Appreciate you also. Thank you. So I'd like the city secretary to read the consent calendar, please.
Would you like to, or else?
Yeah, okay, yeah, we didn't get those. Okay, I have made the appointments for the subcommittees with Mr. Goss's additional counsel. I tried to do it, take into account prior history of service and experience on various subcommittees and that sort of thing. And so this is the appointments that I made for the rest of this year until May of the coming year. So, do you want to read the consent calendar now with these? I'm sorry, these weren't available.
City Council meeting minutes from August 23rd, resolution approving the TMPA generation budget for 2023, Resolution approving a bid received for property located at 1712 Clark Street. Resolution rescinding the bid received on 3116 Silver Street. And then resolution approving city council subcommittee assignments.
Okay, are there any questions from council regarding these items? There being none, I'll open this item up for public testimony. Anyone would like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this, these items, item A, or 9A through E? There being no one, what is the pleasure of the council?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Your second?
Second.
Okay, please vote. Okay, and it passes unanimously. So we'd ask for city staff, city council reports, the July 22 monthly financials. EP.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we're reviewing the comprehensive monthly financial report as of the end of July, at which point we were 83% through the fiscal year. This here is that review of how our general fund was doing. Our revenues are at we're at 25.4 million, or 91% of expected collections, while expenses are 25.9 million, or 81% of budgeted expectations. And then when you look at those pool of what makes up that biggest chunk of revenue, we have our sales tax doing the most down there, a little above 9 million, and then our property taxes shortly behind that, just under 8 million, making up 31%. And again, this year I want to say is the first year where we've had it that early, where our sales tax passed our property taxes. I think it did last year, but it didn't until the very final month of the year. So that speaks to really how well our sales tax numbers are doing this year. And then for that expense side, the biggest pool there is public safety at just under 14 million for 54%, and then non-departmental expenses at 4.7 million, or 18%. And then again, when you look at this 91% of expected collections and 81% of budgeted expectations, those are both really well when we're 83% through the year at this point. This is sales tax year to date 2022 through July. Those collections are up 1.4 million, or 18% compared to this time last year. That chart there just charts out those collections the past 10 years. So our sales tax target we set for the year was 9.1 million. Year-to-date actual is 8.5. So at the end of July, that left a little over $606,000 remaining sales tax to collect to meet budget. This is looking at sales tax as far as the period collections, and again, that's collected, if this was July, those would have been collected in May, reported in June, and then dispersed out by the state to the city of Greenville in July, and that's with any economic development portion of sales tax removed, and these just show some of our comparison cities there. And that amount was $855,352 for July, which was an increase of 11.63% compared to July of last year. So again, sales tax numbers just doing really well. Here is that history of July sales tax, and that just shows the net payment received by the city since 2013. Again, it just keeps on increasing. This is a review of our water and sewer revenues. In total, the water and sewer fund revenues through July are a little above 14 million, which is 86% of budgeted expectations, which again is good when you think of the sense that we're 83% through the year. Those categories going top to bottom. Our wastewater, 5.4 million, other fees, a little above 2 million, and then our water at 6.4 million that make up that total $14.1 million number. And this is a review of our hotel motel occupancy tax. In July, it came in just below 60,000, which was a decrease of 6% compared to July of 2021. I think in June, these were the first times we've seen any decreases since I've been here, and I think it's just finding a stable point. When we had that off year, that green line chart there, you'll see it doesn't really follow the same trend, and that's just the same story of it was COVID year, so I think we're just finding that balance again there. And then does anybody have any questions?
I have one question,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we talked about this before. When you get those sales tax numbers,
yes,
is there any classification of the type of
Yeah.
retail establishment or whatever it came from? In other words, is it?
Yeah, and that's something I've been looking at recently to see if I can present that in. I can never tell y'all exactly, this business gets this much, but I think we found a way to where we can at least present that number into y'all by industry. For example, retail, different categories like that, and we're working on playing with the tax numbers now, but that's something that I'm going to include on this in the future.
I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, we've been looking at that internally, and I think we legally can present it in that manner for y'all. I think it was Ben who originally asked probably my first financial presentation about a year ago, so, yeah.
There
Yeah.
are people at TML that say they can parse that for you, but.
Yep, yeah. And we get I think it's Munis Services we use for that we can dive in there and get that, so. Yeah, and if y'all ever have any other feedback of stuff you might want to see in this presentation or the way you want data represented, feel free to just ask, and I'm happy to work with y'all and provide y'all with what you need.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for GP? If there are none, then we'll move on to item 11, City Council discussion and proposed agenda items. Are there any items that the council would like to discuss in the future? There being none, board and commission minutes, you have the Board of Parks and Recreation minutes before you from July the 20th, 2022. At this point, we'll go into executive session. We certainly appreciate your attendance tonight, and when we come out of executive session, we don't expect a vote. So thank you very much for being here tonight.